これを英語で言うとなんだい?
Please, for God's sake, do not start a rap number. I can barely take y'all twerking in the opening. Cold open for this one was, oh my god, that's gonna haunt my nightmares. You're welcome, kid. Now if you excuse me, I gotta go destroy the world. Wait, what? Yeah! The episode proper opened with Ojamajo picking up Momoko. In the process, she was introduced to Pop, who notably finally started to refer to Doremi as her big sister rather than just by name. Not a bad touch to show a little growth on her part that doesn't quite make up for that pretty bad movie from Shark, but whatever, it's something. At school, we rightfully got some follow-up to the previous episode, with Doremi recapping Momoko's story for their class, in particular Seki, in order to get the okay for her to wear her keepsakes from her old master.
Momoko,
if you have something to say it with your own mouth and not someone else's. But yeah, honestly a good scene, but I also think it's a little too early into the episode to have the characters cry, as that's something you usually want to save up for the climax, or at least have scenes that have built up to this, and no, the previous episode doesn't count. Regardless, it was nice to see most of the class sympathize with her, and Seki give her the okay. That said, the girl who started all of this, Reika, didn't agree, and did actually bring up a good point about letting her wear her own accessories if Momoko could. However, Seki also saw right through that she was just BSing, and didn't actually want to wear her accessories, and was only arguing for the sake of argument. That said though, I think a wristwatch should be passable, as it at least does serve a practical purpose of, telling time. Hell, based off of a quick Google search, it seems like most schools do allow them, as long as they're not overly flashy, which I do understand. I mean, for all you know, this could turn out to be a deadly weapon. Anyway, the class ended up having a lesson about learning Romanji, which is when Japanese words are written out using the English alphabet. And in a smart twist, they decided to throw in a bit of an English lesson since Momoko was around to help both guide and also rebuild her own Japanese.
じゃあまず、アスカ、stand up.
Sorry, I was just feeling a little nostalgic as always. However, Reiko is still a little in Karen mode, but again, I also can't say she's not bringing up a good point in that they are diverting from the proper lesson plan for one student who's already gotten some preferential treatment. I actually really like the setup, as while yes, Reiko was being overly antagonistic, she is also bringing up good arguments about how misplaced some of their class's priorities were. I mean, she is arguing for the wrong and clearly selfish reasons, but at the same time, she does have a bit of a point, and she is also kind of showing the faults in the Japanese school system, which I'm all for. Ultimately, though, she was shot down by the rest of their class, led by Valdis Jr. here, who, is he also voiced by Junko Takeuchi? I also want to learn more so that I can needlessly incorporate it into my other show. Later at the Mahodo, Momoko continued to compare Reika to her former bully and Mary, and even showed a group picture with her. Doremi was able to immediately point her out as the most Karen-looking girl in the group. And speaking of greedy, middle-aged ladies, Della came in singing, which, yeah, I almost forgot was her whole gimmick, though I also don't think she really appeared that much in Sharp, really. Anyway, she of course brought in some furnishings, cooking utensils, and ingredients for their new little shop. However, and while all of that should have led to a bit of a steep bill, they felt like she was kind of overcharging them. No, girls. It's not Della who's trying to rip you off. It's your government. Like, seriously, this is one of those setups that, unfortunately, haven't aged the best when inflation is just plain insane these days. But still, a good scene for showing Momoko's savviness. And she continued to show off by teaching her friends some legit good baking techniques. It certainly started off well, with Momoko teaching them some of the basics, with Aiko in particular being good at using a sifter, which as someone who's used one of those crank types, they're stupid easy, so it's really not that big a deal. But I guess they also needed some sort of reason to give her a partner for the remainder of this episode. Just saying, you could have also done this by having her be good at something like mixing ingredients, which does require some skill, but whatever. Anyway, things did start to crack quite literally when Hazuki messed up a couple of eggs. Not wanting to waste any more ingredients, Momoko understandably wanted to reassign her to cleaning, but Hazuki didn't seem to take it all too well. This continued when she had to teach Ompu how to chop up chocolate properly, and offhandedly did say a rude comment that also sent the little idol running. Now, this was easily the most interesting part of the episode for a couple of reasons. First, and kind of obviously, this is an interesting exploration of culture shock. We've talked about it several times on this channel, but the general gist of it is that Japan and the US are high and low context cultures respectively. The former emphasizes more on what's not vocally said, like through stuff like body language and other social cues. As a result, cultures like Japan can be seen as more polite and reserved, even though I'd argue sometimes what's not said can be even more toxic, but I digress, as either way of communicating isn't necessarily better than the other. Though in this case, being blunt can be seen as rude in Japan, especially in the early 2000s when this came out. And I wouldn't say anyone in this situation was necessarily wrong, as culture is just programmed into people when they take residence in a country for an extended period, especially kids in their most impressionable years. The only thing people can try to do is be a little more sensitive to others. Of course, as we said, Momoko ended up being paired up with Aiko due to the whole sifting thing, and also the fact that to a lesser degree, her Osaka tendencies made her kind of blunt too, though honestly that just kind of sounds like stereotyping on the writer's part than anything else, but whatever, it's still good stuff. Second, and probably a little more significantly, at least with me, this tied in nicely with the Reika subplot, as kind of ironically, Momoko ended up becoming a bully kind of like her. Now, of course, we say kind of because at least she had no ill or selfish intentions behind her, but at the same time, the results were similar, and they were both making practical arguments. This especially hit home when Momoko received, of all things, an apology letter from Mary just as all of this was going on.
Oh, how convenient!
Thus, with Aiko's help, she decided to check in, or more specifically, spy on Reika, at her cram school, where interestingly enough, she was wearing her accessories, which they would probably allow at a more private learning facility like that. Not that it really mattered, as her wannabe Queen Bee status didn't carry over. This led to the cold opener, where she was talking to the final boss of Sweet Precure. And clearly, she could have single-handedly ended the show a lot sooner. But yeah, she used it to vent how she was a lonely girl who just wanted a little more attention, much like Mary as we would later see. While they were out, they also spied on at least their actual friends, and saw Hazuki learning to crack an egg properly. We didn't get to see what Ompu was doing, I'm guessing because they were legit running out of time in this episode, but she did assure that she felt no ill will, and even kind of appreciated the lecture, as later she was able to chop the chocolate properly. All in all, just great stuff that tied up all of the storylines in a neat little package. As a result though, it did make the final act of this episode feel a little lesser when we got a sudden election for the class representative, which Valdez Jr. ended up winning over Reika. I mean, yes, I'm not saying it was bad, as it did end up tying back into the episode's main plots, but it also did have that and then factor to it by shifting to an unrelated plot point, which just sticks out like a sore thumb in an episode that has otherwise been incredibly tightly written. Not a big deal or anything, just kind of worth pointing out. In any case, Reika losing was just a bit of karma for the previous day, which ended up turning everyone against her, except ironically enough, Momoko, who was the only other person who voted for her. This was, again, because of Mary's letter that she had brought with her. And yeah, another issue I have with this scene was that Reika probably should have been the one to read the letter. I mean, yeah, I get that she's meant to be a bit of a show-off who can't always back up what she's selling, but wouldn't it have just have been really poetic to have her read the words of her American counterpart and slowly realize, oh crap, this is me, and after she finished reading it, she could have gone full tsundere and say something like, I wasn't apologizing to you, that was all Mary. But no, instead it just had to be Valdez Jr. because I guess someone on staff really likes that chin. Still, the episode ended nicely enough with the two burying the hatchet and starting up an actual friendship. Still, that little bit of fumbling at the end aside, this was still a really good episode. For the most part, it's one of the most tightly written episodes after over 2 seasons, and it's packed with a lot of great themes and characterization. Best way I could describe this is lost in translation, minus ScarJo's wooden acting, so yeah, that's a plus. If you couldn't tell, I am a bit of a fan of Reika, and yes, she is a bit of a queen bee and a bully, but honestly, that just makes her more interesting as we have gotten to see the reasons behind why she acts like that. A highly flawed character can be engaging as long as the show takes the time to address those flaws, which this episode pulled off brilliantly by giving her an also flawed foil in her fellow overly assertive blonde in Momoko. Again, my favorite part of this episode was how the two girls ended up pushing away others through their bluntness that did have at least shades of sincerity. Obviously, Reika was being a little more selfish and aggressive, but she did at least approach her arguments from a logical standpoint. Same can be said for Momoko based on her logic that actually came from a whole different country. There was validity in both girls' approaches, but both needed to read the room a little better, and in Reika's case, not antagonize others. But that's just kind of what happens when you're stuck in a perpetual loop of loneliness that leads to jealousy and bullying like it did with Mary. Again, this is all such a good, tightly written script with even little touches like Aiko relating with Momoko through their regional culture shock. The only flaws I can kind of find with the story were near the end with the sudden election and not letting Reika read Mary's letter. Yeah, maybe next time you shouldn't have Naruto half-heartedly read an emotional letter, when even if he's being honest, I still can't take him all that seriously. Though really, that only makes this an almost perfect episode, because this was still a great exploration of cultural differences and the nature of bullies, and how even genuinely nice people can slip into those tendencies. This is overall just a very enjoyable episode that you can enjoy with your little bird friends, who you hopefully won't do anything bad to, especially if they're voiced by Frieza. Later this week, we'll release a Doujinshi review for Mahotsukai Precure 2 coming soon, and then after that, maybe we'll do a little summer preview video. Yeah, with Blue Archive ending soon, we gotta fill that review slot with a series or two, and I think we found some good picks for the season. We'll also share what we'll personally watch next season, but not necessarily review. Still, do check it out, and maybe we can even compare watch lists. So look forward to it. Until then though, for now my friends, and in case you're wondering why we didn't compare that bird plushie with Tweety, well,
Airway, lights out.
he's a little busy right now.
Turn out those
Okay, jeez.